Death can come in the strangest ways, and sometimes all it takes is an object falling from above. In this video, we'll explore 5 of the most ridiculous deaths caused by falling objects. Freak accidents that prove you never know what might hit you next. It was October 24, 1988, in Buenos Aires, Argentina. What began as a seemingly small incident, a pet dog's fall from a 13th floor balcony, quickly turned into a tragic sequence of events that left the city in shock. Cachi, a poodle belonging to the Montoya family, was playing in their high-rise apartment that day. One of the children threw a tennis ball, which bounced onto the balcony. Excited, Cachi ran after it, but as he reached the railing, something went wrong. The recently repaired barrier gave way, and the dog plunged 13 stories down. At that exact moment, 75-year-old Marta Espina was walking below. She had no time to react as Cachi struck her on the head. The impact was fatal for both the dog and Marta. A quiet afternoon had turned into a horrifying scene in an instant. What should have been an isolated accident quickly escalated. A crowd gathered around Marta and Cachi's lifeless bodies. Among them was 46-year-old Edith Sola, who had been walking nearby. Drawn by the commotion, she stepped closer to see what had happened. As she stood near the scene, a bus was approaching on Rivadavia Avenue. In the chaos, Edith accidentally stepped too far into the street. The driver, unable to stop in time, swerved, but couldn't avoid hitting her. She was thrown to the pavement with devastating force. Horrified onlookers saw everything unfold within seconds. The tragedy didn't stop there. One of the witnesses, a man whose identity was never revealed, had watched the entire sequence, from Cachi's fall to Marta's passing, and then Edith's accident. The overwhelming sight proved too much for him. As he stood there, visibly shaken, he suddenly collapsed, clutching his chest. Bystanders rushed to his side, and paramedics arrived within minutes. But despite their efforts, the man didn't survive. He had suffered a heart attack. In less than a few minutes, 4 lives were lost, 3 people and 1 dog, in an accident unlike anything the city had seen before. News of the bizarre tragedy spread quickly. Local newspapers ran headlines like 4 lives lost in one accident, the strange case of Cachi the poodle. The chain of events seemed too unreal to believe. Even years later, it was referenced in movies and social media, becoming a chilling example of how unpredictable life can be. The community struggled to make sense of what had happened. Witnesses remained shaken, haunted by what they had seen. The Montoya family, who had adored Cachi, was devastated. Though they never could have imagined such consequences, they couldn't shake the guilt of knowing their pet's accident had set everything in motion. As time passed, the story became a legend in Buenos Aires, forever tied to the Caballito neighborhood. A simple game with a tennis ball had led to an unimaginable loss of life. The events of that day remain one of the most unsettling accidents in the city's history. A chilling example of how one small moment can have consequences far beyond what anyone expects. In 1982, 27-year-old David Grunman and his roommate James Joseph Suchochi set out into the Arizona desert near Lake Pleasant. Armed with a shotgun, they weren't on any serious mission, just looking for excitement. But their decision to use the towering cacti as target practice would lead to a tragic and bizarre accident. David, familiar with firearms, often used them for fun rather than for any real purpose. That day, he decided to take aim at the massive saguaro cacti that dotted the desert landscape. Shooting at cacti wasn't unheard of. Some did it out of boredom, others just for the thrill of destruction. But what David didn't realize was how dangerous these seemingly harmless plants could be. The saguaro cactus, native to the Sonoran Desert, is one of the largest and most iconic cacti in the world. These slow-growing plants can reach up to 40 feet tall and weigh several tons. They take decades to grow their first arm and can live over 150 years. Despite their importance to the ecosystem, they have often been vandalized, sometimes by people unaware of their sheer weight and structure. That day, David and James found a smaller saguaro, and David shot at it until it fell over. Encouraged by his success, he set his sights on a much larger cactus, standing about 26 feet tall and likely over a century old. He fired multiple rounds into its thick trunk, aware of the consequences. With each shot, the cactus began to weaken. Then, without warning, a massive arm, roughly 4 feet long, snapped off, crashed down with immense force, striking David before he had time to react. His only words were, "Timber!" before the heavy limb landed on him. The sheer weight and sharp spines left him pinned to the ground with severe injuries. James, watching in shock, was unable to do anything. We're deep in the desert, far from help. David, trapped under the enormous cactus limb, had no chance of escape. Adventure had turned into a tragedy. Death became one of Arizona's most unusual accidents, a grim example of how nature can be unpredictable and even deadly. While it seemed like a harmless act of destruction, the sheer power of the desert landscape had responded in a way no one expected. Beyond the shock of the incident, David's story drew attention to the importance of protecting Arizona's native plants, particularly the saguaro. These cacti are essential to the desert ecosystem, providing food and shelter for various animals. Because of their value, Arizona passed laws as early as 1929 to protect them, making it illegal to harm or remove them. David's death was both tragic and a stark example of how reckless behavior in nature can have dire consequences. Some see his story as a lesson in respecting the environment, while others recall it as an eerie twist of fate, nature striking back in an unexpected way. Over time, his story has become almost like an urban legend. Some see it as an unlucky accident, while others view it as an ironic end for someone who destroyed a living thing only to be harmed by it in return. Regardless of how people interpret it, this incident remains a striking reminder of how unpredictable nature can be. While deserts may seem empty, they are full of life, and sometimes nature has the final say. It was December 9, 2024, a cold winter morning in Lunenburg County, Virginia. Lester C. Harvey Jr., a 58-year-old father of 5, was doing something he had loved since childhood: hunting. For Lester, hunting wasn't just a sport, it was a way of life. Raised in rural Virginia, he had spent years honing his skills as an outdoorsman. Hunting trips were not just about tracking animals, but about bonding with family and friends. On this day, Lester joined a group of hunters tracking a black bear. It was a routine outing, one he had done many times before. The hunters successfully followed the bear to a tree, where it climbed in an attempt to escape. They observed it from a distance, planning their next move. Then, as the group started to step back, one of the hunters fired a shot. What happened next was unexpected. The injured bear lost its grip and fell from the tree, landing directly on Lester, who was standing about 10 feet away. The animal, weighing several hundred pounds, struck him with full force. The other hunters rushed to Lester, trying to help. Realizing the severity of his injuries, they immediately called for medical assistance. Paramedics arrived quickly and transported him to a nearby hospital. However, his condition was critical. Despite being transferred to 2 different hospitals for treatment, Lester passed away 4 days later, on December 13th. The Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources investigated the incident and confirmed that Lester's injuries were caused by the bear's fall. Officials determined that it was a tragic accident, and no charges were filed. Lester's family was devastated. His loved ones described him as a generous, hard-working man who was always there for others. His obituary reflected the deep loss felt by his community, calling him a friend to all and someone who never met a stranger. His son Josh shared an emotional tribute, saying, "Dad was doing what he loved most, hunting with me and some of his best friends when this happened. I love you, Dad. We made so many great memories together, and I'm grateful for everything you taught me." His daughter Lindsay also expressed her grief, calling her father the hardest worker I know. She shared how hunting was one of the few things he would take time off work for. "I'm broken in ways I didn't even know I could be," she wrote. "Please keep us in your prayers." Lester's passing left an emptiness in the lives of his wife, April, his 3 sons, 2 daughters, and 8 grandchildren. He had been the heart of his family, not only as a loving father and grandfather, but also as a skilled contractor and a loyal friend. The local community also felt the loss deeply. Many knew Lester as a kind and approachable man. He was an active member of Mount Carmel United Methodist Church and was often seen helping at community events. His kindness and generosity had made an impact on many. James Russell Hudson, a close friend, posted a video tribute remembering Lester as one of the best. He spoke about how painful it was to lose someone so cherished, especially during the holiday season. "Keep Mr. Harvey's family in your prayers," he said. "It's never easy losing someone, especially this time of year." Though the incident was ruled an accident, many found it hard to believe how something so rare could happen. Hunting is an activity that requires careful planning and safety measures, yet on this day, an unexpected turn of events led to tragedy. Despite the heartbreaking loss, Lester's family and friends focused on the life he lived rather than the way he passed. They remembered his warmth, his hard work, and the love he had for his family. His children and grandchildren will carry on the lessons he taught them, keeping his legacy alive. It was Thursday, July 20th, 2023, in New Taipei City, Taiwan. Huang, a 21-year-old student at National Chengchi University, was on her way to school that afternoon. She had just left a nearby building and stopped at a bus stop near Exit 2 of the Xinpu MRT station, a busy area in the Banqiao district. Huang was casually dressed, carrying a backpack, and wearing a mask while she waited. At exactly 1:06 p.m., an unexpected tragedy struck. A 30-kilogram air conditioning unit fell from the 17th floor of a nearby building, hitting her on the head and severely injuring her legs. The impact was so strong that it left a large wound. A witness later recalled how another woman standing nearby had narrowly avoided being hit. Bystanders rushed to help, including a few nurses who happened to be in the area. They immediately tried to assist her while someone called for emergency services. An ambulance arrived quickly and transported her to Far Eastern Memorial Hospital. Despite the efforts of medical staff, Huang did not survive due to the severity of her injuries. News of her sudden passing shocked the community. Friends, classmates, and university officials were devastated. Huang had been a finance student with a bright future, and her school expressed deep sorrow, offering support to her grieving family. Eyewitnesses described horrifying details of what had happened. One person recalled seeing Huang lying motionless, with blood pooling around her while the broken air conditioning unit lay nearby. It was a heartbreaking sight that many found difficult difficult to forget. Authorities immediately launched an investigation into the accident. Their focus turned to the worker responsible for installing the unit, 31-year-old Lee. He had been assigned to install the unit in a 17th floor apartment but had not secured it properly. Instead of ensuring a stable installation, he had fastened it to the window frame incorrectly. Lee admitted that he lacked experience with these types of installations. In fact, he had even called a colleague earlier for guidance. Unfortunately, the unit was not secured well enough, and at some point it came loose, crashing down to the street below. Tragically, Huang happened to be directly in its path. Lee was taken in for questioning and acknowledged his responsibility. Authorities charged him with negligent manslaughter, a serious offense in Taiwan that can lead to up to 5 years in prison or a fine of 500,000 new Taiwan dollars. Additionally, the company that employed him was fined 300,000 new Taiwan dollars for violating safety regulations under the Occupational Safety and Health Act. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that this was an avoidable accident. If proper safety measures had been followed, the unit would not have fallen. The incident sparked widespread discussions about construction safety, especially in high-rise buildings. Many called for stricter regulations to prevent similar accidents in the future. Huang's tragic passing also raised concerns about the qualifications and training of workers handling heavy equipment. Ensuring that installations like these are properly inspected and double-checked could mean the difference between life and death. The community and National Chengchi University urged for stronger enforcement of safety standards to prevent further tragedies. For Huang's family, the loss was unbearable. She had been an ambitious young woman with a promising future, and her life was taken away in an instant. The entire community mourned her, struggling to understand how such a preventable accident had cost her life. What made this tragedy even more unsettling was how it happened in a completely ordinary setting, a simple bus stop in the middle of the city. Something that should have been a routine moment turned into an unimaginable loss due to one mistake. As discussions about safety continued, authorities emphasized the importance of responsibility in every job, no matter how small the task may seem. This devastating accident was a wake-up call for construction workers, employers, and regulators to take workplace safety more seriously. Huang's story will not be forgotten. While her life was cut short, the impact of this tragedy pushed for important conversations about safety, accountability, and the measures needed to prevent similar incidents in the future. On May 2, 2014, a night of football in Recife, Brazil, turned into a horrifying event that shocked the nation. The match between Santa Cruz and Paraná at Arruda Stadium had ended in a 1-1 draw, and fans were making their way out of the stadium when tensions escalated. What started as typical post-game frustration quickly spiraled into violence. The stadium, packed with over 8,000 spectators, had been filled with excitement. But as fans left, a group of Santa Cruz supporters clashed with Paraná fans. Chaos erupted, and some individuals began tearing out toilet bowls from the stadium restrooms, hurling them from the upper stands. 3 were thrown in total, but one had devastating consequences. A toilet bowl struck 26-year-old Paulo Ricardo Gomes da Silva on the head, killing him instantly. The force of the impact, estimated to be over 750 pounds, left no chance of survival. As others fled in panic, Paulo lay lifeless on the ground. Paulo was a devoted Santa Cruz fan who had only come to enjoy the game. His sudden death left his family devastated. His mother, Jolma, later spoke to the media, overwhelmed with grief. "They took my son away from me," she said, expressing pain no parent should have to endure. The incident happened just 40 days before Brazil was set to host the 2014 FIFA World Cup. Recife was one of the host cities, though matches were scheduled at the newly built Arena Pernambuco. Despite this, Paulo's death cast a shadow over Brazil's preparations, raising serious concerns about fan safety. The country had long struggled with football-related violence, but this shocking act drew global attention. Authorities responded quickly. The Arruda Stadium was shut down while investigations took place, and the Brazilian Football Federation suspended all matches there indefinitely. Police worked to identify those responsible for throwing the toilet bowls, as disturbing images from that night spread across news outlets. Football violence in Brazil wasn't new, but this case was particularly shocking. Organized fan groups had been involved in past altercations, and security measures had often failed to prevent them. With the World Cup approaching, this tragedy intensified fears about safety during the tournament. For many, this event highlighted deep-rooted issues within Brazilian football culture. Rivalries often extended beyond the game, leading to clashes that put innocent spectators at risk. Officials now faced mounting pressure to take action. The death of a fan in such a brutal manner could not be ignored. As the World Cup drew closer, concerns remained. Could Brazil ensure the safety of players and fans? The new Arena Pernambuco symbolized modernization, but the events at Arruda Stadium reminded the world of the challenges still facing Brazilian football. Despite increased security during the tournament, Paulo's death was never forgotten. His mother, like many others who had lost loved ones to fan violence, was left to grieve. No amount of justice could bring her son back. In the weeks that followed, investigations continued. Reports suggested organized fan groups played a role in the violence, but the full details remained uncertain. Though the football world soon shifted focus to the upcoming World Cup, the tragedy at Arruda Stadium remained a painful memory. That night was supposed to be about football, a game meant to bring people together. Instead, it became one of Brazil's darkest sporting moments. A young man lost his life, and a family was left with heartbreak. The sport that had brought so much joy to Brazil was now linked to an unimaginable tragedy. As the World Cup unfolded, many still remembered the shocking events in Recife. Even with promises of improved security, the scars of that night lingered. For Paulo's family, the pain would never fade. His death was a tragic reminder that moments of joy can turn tragic in an instant.